All right, here we go, guys. And if you watched one of my recent videos on the new to me Eastward 24 Cat, a catamaran boat that I designed and had built by Eastward Boats in Fort Pierce, Florida, I mentioned that in my past I owned an Everglades 290 Pilot, and honestly, the best riding boat I had previously owned. And one of the viewers of that video, Ryan, made the comment, would love to learn more, and here's the comment, would love to learn more about the Everglades you used to own. And that's the point of this video. Again, the Eastward is my 8th new boat. This Everglades was my 4th boat, or maybe my 5th boat. Let's go through the history of them. My first boat was a 1971 T-Craft, and we'll get into that boat a little more later in the video. There's a reason I'm going to bring that boat up. I have done a video on that boat. My second boat was a 1985 20-foot Sportcraft Fisherman, a center console. My third boat was my first new boat, a Maycraft 19, which I owned for 3 years. Sold that and bought a 23 Maycraft Pilot House. I've done a video on that boat as well. Which leads us to this boat, a 2005 Everglades 290 Pilot that I bought in 2013, and I ran it through the end of the 2015 season. I'm in New York, so our seasons typically end around November. And why don't we start our review at the bow of the boat? You'll see the 2 seats there in the front. Notably, the boat had a windlass. This was really in the pre-trolling motor days, so the windlass was very helpful, though, right? You could bring up the anchor from the helm area. You'll see the forward seating, and we'll stop and pay a little bit of attention to this area. A couple things that I just loved about this boat. Many of you who have watched my new boat videos know that I hate when you have to remove cushions to open the forward compartments under the forward seating. You'll see the notches in the middle of those forward seats, a wonderful design by Everglades. One of the first designs, I think, where you can actually open the hatches without having to remove the cushions. You'll also see right above those forward seats that rectangular compartment. That was rod storage, and it was on both sides. Again, just a great invention of gunnel space where you could stow away, I believe it was 4 rods on each side, and it just made that, hey, I want to leave the boat, I'm going to be back tomorrow, do I have to schlep the rods back and forth? No, on the Everglades, clever design, you can hide them away in the gunnels of the boat. Now, I wouldn't keep them there for more than a few days because, it's in the, I kept my boat docked, right? You're going to deal with salt water. I prefer to bring them home and keep them in a dry area, but just a great spot if you were going to use the boat over a weekend to keep the rods on the boat without bringing them back and forth from home. And if you look closely right in front of the forward seats or the forward-facing seat, you'll see a big fish box. I used it for storage. We'll talk about the fish boxes on this boat. There's another one in the stern. But a huge area. And if this was a boat being used today, I imagine that would be a great spot to stow your batteries if you were going to add a trolling motor. And this was called the Everglades 290 Pilot, and you can see here why. You got a fully enclosed windshield, really almost like a doghouse effect, and we'll show more of how I built the boat out to make it more like a pilot house. You'll also see I had a go light up there, Garmin radar, windshield wiper on the windshield. We could be in the sloppiest weather. Windshield could be getting wet. I was nice and dry in the doghouse area, and with the windshield wiper, I always had clear visibility. And as we moved aft in the boat, let's take a second, step into the head area. You see it did have a full toilet. You'll also notice on the top left of the page here, we did have a sink, one of 2 sinks on the boat. Yes, 2 sinks on a center console fishing boat. Lots of storage areas. You'll see a little storage area behind the toilet. And to the left, you'll see there's a hatch there. We kept rags and supplies, toilet paper in there. Again, I'm going to be harping on the same thing. A very well thought out creature comfort boat. Now, stepping back, and we got a side profile here of the Helm area, you'll notice there's curtains rolled up here. Now, the Everglades 290 Pilot came with the option of removable doors, convertible doors, almost like on a Jeep. They sat on hinges and you can remove them. I think they also folded somehow. Mine did not come with it. I went to a local shop called Mills, really old, I think one of the oldest upholstery shops in the country, local to me in Greenport, Long Island, and I had them fabricate 2 sets of curtains, one on each side. Here's a shot of me driving the boat in the fall, going for blackfish. I had the curtain up here, but there were many days when that curtain, right, you unclipped it, the zippers would go down, and you were fully enclosed in that doghouse. And even if there was side spray, you were immune to it. And powering the Everglades were twin 225 Hondas. When I sold the boat, those Hondas had, I think, around 550 hours on them. Keep that number in mind when we get to the end of the video. They were generally extremely reliable, not extremely powerful, but I had hardly any issues with them other than oxygen sensors. I think I had at least one oxygen sensor go a year. Those of you that have owned these vintage Hondas have probably experienced that too. It's a relatively easy fix though. And in the grand scheme of things, where power head failures, lower unit failures, none of that, just those pesky oxygen sensors. Now looking aft, you'll see that there's a seat. That seat was folded up. That was also the access to the bilge compartment, really huge access to that bilge, very innovative at the time, where you didn't have to go through a little porthole on the floor. Seat down, you'll see again, very comfortable for 2 people, facing forward. One of the first boats, I believe, that had that style of flip-down seat. We also had a very innovative feature in the port corner. You'll see a cooler there. It actually slid out. Again, I think one of the first boats that had that slide-out feature. Now you see them predominantly behind the leaning posts, but this was in the aft port corner, out of the way, and that's where we would store all our drinks. And here's a shot from the starboard side, just giving you an idea of the amount of fishing space we had there. Again, a ton of room on a 29-foot boat for fishing, just a really well thought out fishing area. And here's a shot of the tackle center, and there's that second sink I mentioned. You'll see a cutting board right there. That's where we would cut all our bait. Below that, a 64-gallon, if memory serves correct, I think it was 64-gallon live well. And look at those 8 slide-out drawers. I mean, just a fantastic use of the space there. And we stored everything in those drawers. Here's a shot of some of our leader, Uncle Josh, pork rinds for striper fishing, but we would keep rigs in there, weights in there. Just a fantastic way to safely stow all your fishing gear, all your tackle, easy to get to. And obviously I knew where everything was. I didn't have it labeled, but I knew that the hooks were in the left side, the leader was on the bottom right side. And again, just a very, very convenient feature on this Everglades. And that tackle center was great because boy, oh boy, did this boat put us on some big fish, big stripers, big blackfish, and perhaps most famously, we caught a ton of fluke on this boat. I mean, this was a great boat for getting to Montauk because it rode so well. It rode almost like a combination of a planing hull and a full displacement hull, like one of these down east boats. It just smashed through the biggest waves, and we were able to get to some of the prime fishing grounds in Montauk on the Long Island Sound and just catch some really big fish. And you know, earlier in the video I mentioned my T-craft, and I had a story with that, and here's a shot of the T-craft, what it looked like before, and ultimately what its final fate was. Although we did get it up, and like I said, I have a video about that, how I sold the boat, but fully disclosed that it had sunk. And I'll have a link in the video description to that video of that T-craft. But basically, you know, I disclosed it had sunk, I sold the boat, sold the trailer, and a couple of years later, I get a random phone call out of the blue from the new owner of the boat, not the guy I sold it to. He fixed it up, sold it to a guy, never disclosed what happened to the boat. And obviously I just sold my 32 Sea Vee, and more on that boat too in a minute, to a client of mine, a charter client of mine, and a great guy, Andy. So I know where that boat is. But other than this T-Craft and getting that call, I never, ever saw one of my boats for sale again until I was doing this video and I researched the Everglades. And I wanted to see what they were selling for. So I sold the boat in 2015 for $72,000 with the triple axle trailer. And I had bought the boat for $76,000. So I lost $4,000 on the deal. I did upgrade some things. I changed out the Ray Marine to a Garmin unit. But when I was researching this video, I did find some 2005 Everglades, and I found a yellow one. And I'm like, oh, that looks a lot like my boat, twin 225 Hondas. And when the buyer, and it was in New Jersey where the buyer of my boat was located. And when this gentleman bought my boat, he wanted a new trailer. He did not want to deal with the trailer I had there, which was fine with me, right? He worked that out with my boat yard. And here's the trailer. And he bought the trailer from the broker that sold my boat, Red at North Shore Yacht Sales. And I zoomed in on this trailer, North Shore Yacht Sales. This was my boat, and it's currently for sale on Boat Trader for $99,000. Now, I know I just said I sold the boat for $76,000 or $72,000. I bought it for $76,000, ran it 3 years, sold it for $72,000. You know, that was in 2015. Today's money, that's actually $91,000. And you know, the seller's only added maybe 125 hours in the almost 10 years he's owned the boat. So he has not put a lot of hours on those engines, and he has added a second screen. He said he has replaced the curtains. I know that one of the curtains did get ripped near the end of my ownership, but I couldn't believe it. I had no intention of finding this boat. I was working on this video, just wanted to see what they were selling for, and yeah, here we go. I actually found my boat. And like I said, it was a great riding boat. I just sold my 32 Sea Vee. I would put this boat as the best, this Everglades 290 Pilot as the best riding boat that I have ever owned. And what's really interesting and kind of crazy is many years ago, I was in the Florida Keys and I chartered a 34 Sea Vee in Key West and had a great day of fishing, but was so unimpressed with the ride of the Sea Vee. Now, that was a 34 Sea Vee with twin 300s. And, you know, I posted about it on the Hull Truth, and here's the thread. You can look this thread up too and find it. And who would have known that a few years later, I would own a 32 Sea Vee. And although the 32 Sea Vee was probably the best fishing boat I've ever owned because it was wide open, it didn't have forward seating, it was very well thought out for fishing, and it rode great. I mean, I've had plenty of, Andy, I think, bought the boat from me because of how great it rode. We got caught in a bad storm on the last charter he was on, and it just ate those seas up. But I will go to my grave as saying that the best riding boat I have ever owned, and many of my friends who had ridden on both boats will agree with me, was that 29 Everglades. It's just a solid foam-filled hull. And as I described earlier, kind of toes that line between a planing hull and a full displacement hull. You know, finding it on Boat Trader for sale so many, almost 10 years after I sold it, was just an added treat. Thank you, Ryan, for suggesting this video. I had it on my mind for a long time, and your message prompted me to actually do a video about it. And I hope you guys enjoyed this video. It was a treat for me to do, like I said. As always, if you like these videos, hit that like button. And if you're not already a subscriber and you like content like this, please consider subscribing.